welcome to our next edition of Books in Focus, where we're talking about exciting books coming out in March, led by Christine, myself, and Miranda. I don't know why I'm introducing us all of a sudden. Okay, so we like to start out with guaranteed fiction bestsellers, so that you can get on the holds list before everybody else for these exciting books coming out in March. You're not going to believe this, but there's another James Patterson coming out. Countdown is number 2 in the Amy Cornwell series. Agent Amy excels at working secretly until a botched field operation reveals dark dealings between her boss and informant, and she has to work to dismantle a hidden plot threatening the lives of Americans. We have I Will Find You by Harlan Coben. This one, father's accused of murdering his son. Years later, after his imprisonment, there's evidence, there's a photograph that's brought to him of somebody who might potentially be his son. And he has to break out of prison and try and find out, prove his innocence, I should say. We're the opponents from Danielle Steele. This one's going to be a short one. It's about a woman running her family's luxury department store that's been handed down through generations. And there's a wealthy investor who's trying to buy her out and take it over. So it's about her struggle. Collateral Damage is the 17th of the Allie Reynolds series. Allie and High Noon Enterprises face the consequences of a desperate revenge plot in this new thriller. We have Margaret Atwood's Old Babes in Hollywood. It's going to be 15 short stories where she deals with everything from memory issues to, of course, relationships with Atwood's usual wit and insight. We have Hello Beautiful, the next one from Anne Napoleano. I don't know why I'm butchering that so far. I suddenly forgot how to say it. Did anyone read Dear Edward a couple years ago? I really enjoyed Dear Edward, and for anyone that subscribes to Apple, it's being turned into a series on Apple. It's the story of a young boy who's a sole survivor of a plane crash. It was a bestseller in 2020, I think, so maybe under everyone's radar because we were at home. But if you liked Dear Edward, be sure and check out her newest, Hello Beautiful. It's a family story about overcoming personal tragedy and choosing your own family. Elizabeth Berg, we all like Elizabeth Berg. Hopefully everyone's read the story of Author True Love. This is a prequel to that Mason, Alabama series, where we're gonna meet a young Author True Love and his first crush. Hang the Moon by Jeanette Walls, and she's famous for The Glass Castle. So she's back into fiction now, and her main character, Sally Kincaid, is going to fight to earn the respect of her family and reclaim her spot in the family bootlegging business after a screw-up when she was younger. Okay, so those are going to be the hot picks for March, so we know everyone's going to be checking out.
And then we also have some hot picks in nonfiction. We have Poverty by America by Matthew Desmond. This is a fiercely argued book that is thought-provoking and draws on extensive research, history, and original reporting to show how affluent Americans knowingly and unknowingly propagate poverty. We have Saving Time, Discovering a Life Beyond the Clock by Jenny Odell. This is a deeply hopeful book that offers different ways to experience time and value hours. Who Gets Believed by Deanna Nayri. Sorry, I practiced. This book explores and reckons with our cultural views on believability and perception in general, and has been described as very thought-provoking and very interesting overall. The Book of Animal Secrets, Nature's Lessons for a Long and Happy Life by Dr. David V. Angus, explores the creativity and wonder of the animal kingdom and how these things can positively impact human health. Ghosts of the Orphanage, a story of mysterious deaths, a conspiracy of silence, and a search for justice by Christine Kenley, exposes the shocking and secret history of 20th century orphanages that hid violence, abuse, and death behind walls that were supposedly supposed to be a sanctuary. The Long Reckoning, a story of war, peace, and redemption in Vietnam by George Black, is described as the moving story of how a small group of people, including 2 Vietnam veterans, forced the U.S. government to take responsibilities for the horrors of Agent Orange and the Unexploded Munitions Inflicted on the Vietnamese People. Travelers to Unimagined Lands, Dementia, and the Hidden Workings of the Mind by Dasha Kippur is the compelling book that blends science and storytelling as it explores the relationship between individuals with dementia and the minds of their caregivers. And then Emotional Labor is the invisible work shaping our lives and how to claim our power by Rose Hackman. Is a well-researched book that looks into the invisible labor essential to our society and an economy that is often asked of women.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I realize a lot of those are very uplifting titles. I think mine just meant because it was growing outside.
This one is not going to be uplifting either. So this is a debut novel. It is well reviewed on a lot of the things that I was looking at as being well written and well executed. It's the coming of age story about sisters born in the Caribbean but growing up in Brooklyn. Sisters Sasha and Zora, and their parents are struggling with addiction and illness, I think both of which varying at different times in their life. They're not having a very good upbringing. As the sisters are getting old enough to kind of get out of the house, find friends, find lives, and define themselves, a dark family secret is revealed, pulling everyone back together. The sisters can be at odds at times, as most teenagers can be, but will come together and fight for their family. What is of most interest about this book, it's going to have features of magical realism based in Caribbean folklore and told from different perspectives. And this, to me, sounds very interesting. I like reading about other cultures in this way. And I know nothing of Caribbean folklore, so it promises to be some good characters along the way. So Rita likes for the human origins of Beatrice Potter and other essential ghosts would be Helen Umami, who writes fantastical settings, things like you can't tell if the house is a character in the book or just a house, that she has this very immersive style of incorporating her fantastical dreams, it seems, into her books. I also picked up this one off the new shelf about struggling family experiences in wild, imaginative settings. This one's kind of this weird sci-fi dystopian, but it had such fantastical elements that it made me think of the folklore we're going to get when we read the human origins of Beatrice Potter and other essential ghosts, once you make it past that title. The Curator. Another weird pick. I don't know, a lot of weird books I picked up this month. So The Curator is going to be the newest from Owen King, who is apparently Stephen King's youngest son, which I did not know. He has one besides Joe. There's a cat on the cover.
I know.
Okay, cool. It's not a coincidence either. It's a charming and fantastical world where cats are revered as religious figures. And if that's not enough to sell you, yes. Miranda's a big fan here. Reviews seem to suggest it is going to be a complicated world building, lots of interesting characters, lots of things going on, but it's a very interesting story that very successfully comes together at the end and is well worth the wild ride. King's made-up world community is on the brink of revolt and disaster, and a secret society is trying to prevent societal collapse with a whole cast of characters to follow. Main character Dora is quick-witted and likable in her quest to solve her brother's murder, along with all the other things going on in this book. For fans of fantasy and cats, couldn't find anything exactly like this one, went on a lot of cat deep dives. But for the elements in The Curator, I would recommend these read-alikes. There's a series by Robin Hobbs, a fantasy series with crazy, interesting characters and world building going on. There's also this it's not listed as a sci-fi, but it's Tell Me an Ending. It is an alternative reality where people can erase their memories with an interesting cast of characters, and they all make their different decisions on how to erase their memories going forward. So I thought those are both interesting titles. Curator. And you can get on the holds list after Miranda. Be the second one to read this. We do fantasy. It's a name of note.
Alright. Jacqueline Quinn Spear.
So,
Has everyone read something by her? Yeah, she's really quite
I've already reserved
wonderful.
that one.
What's that?
I've already reserved it.
Oh, you have? Good for you, Carol. This is The White Lady, and Miss Winspear is going to give us yet another extraordinary heroine. This one is set in post-World War II Britain in 1947, and our protagonist, Eleanor White, occupies a grace and favor property, which is a rare privilege in England offered to faithful servants of the crown for services to their nation. Eleanor is a former wartime operative. She's a veteran of 2 wars. She is a trained killer, and she is very protective of her anonymity. This reluctant ex-spy, who of course has demons of her own, finds herself facing down one of the most dangerous organized crime gangs in London. Ultimately, she will expose corruption that reaches from Scotland Yard to the highest levels of government. But another layer to this story involves her neighbor. Her neighbor, who she hasn't been very neighborly with, but this family has a daughter who is able to sort of break through her facade and touch her heart a little bit. And then she finds out that the father, Joe, is desperate to escape his own past as prodigal son of the powerful Mackey crime family. And they want him back. So that's the family, the crime family she's dealing with, and then there's going to be this layer for the neighbor to come into the situation. And in her quest to uncover the truth behind the family's pursuit of her neighbor, Eleanor unwittingly sets out on a treacherous path, yet is the one that leads to her freedom. And for Rita Likes the Alice Network, have you guys read that one? I've not read it. You know, it sounds really good. But it's about female spies, a team of them in World War I. And then I chose American Spy by Wilkinson. It highlights a more modern spy experience. It's a female spy with the CIA in the 1980s, late 1980s. And American Spy includes some humor and a love story, if you just don't want a dry spy story.
So, the London Seance Society by Sarah Penner is her new atmospheric story that immerses you in the dark underworld of spiritualism in the 1870s. Our protagonist is Volodine, we're gonna go with that, and she is known the world over for her skills at conjuring murder victims and getting them to tell the name of their killer. However, she finds that she has conjured more than she bargained for in this intricately plotted, well-detailed historical novel full of eccentric characters and vengeance. The first read-alike I have is The Lost Apothecary, also by Sarah Penner. It was actually nominated as one of the best books of 2022. It has a similar theme of vengeance, and on a cold February evening in a back alley in London, much on an evening like tonight, our protagonist awaits in her apothecary. As she waits, she only has 2 rules. The poisons must never be used to harm another woman, and the names of the murderer and her victim must be recorded in the apothecary's register. And that is all I will give you on that book.
I've read that.
It's
That's
very
really,
Okay,
that's
so-
really good, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
For those of you who haven't.
That's good.
And then the other book I have is Seance Infernal. It has a similar dark and atmospheric tone. Our protagonist is Alex, who is hired to track down what could possibly be the first motion picture ever made, called Seance Infernal. However, there are mysteries behind this film more than just cinematic magic, or is something much worse going on. The questions are all there and even more in this fast-paced thriller. also me. So we're gonna juggle some books. So, unfortunately, between yesterday and today, somebody grabbed the, what's wrong with, grabbed one of my books. It's so sad. So, this is Chlorine by Jade Song. It is her debut. It's described as the dark side of coming of age stories. Ren is a swimmer and our protagonist. She has a one-track mind. If she swims well enough, her parents will love her, her coach will be kinder to her, she'll get scholarships and a good education and have a good life. And the story is her trials and tribulations of growing up in a society that puts this kind of pressure on young women, but it's from her perspective as an adult. It's described as a powerful novel that is full of fierce and defiant determination. The first thing that I thought of with the description of this was actually what The Fireflies Knew by Kai Harris, which is my first read like, because it is also a coming-of-age story with a darker side. It focuses on 10-year-old Katie, or Kenyatta, as she is called, and she is sent to live with her grandfather over the summer after the death of her father. This is a steadily paced and equally emotional story that follows her as she deals with the distant relationship between her, her mother, and her sister, and tries to figure out where she fits in her family. The other read like I have for this one is Now Is Not the Time to Panic by Kevin Wilson, and I love that title. It is about two teenage misfits who come together one summer with little to do, so they begin making posters and hanging them around their small town for fun. But then other posters start to appear with darker consequences. This is an exuberant cast of characters exploring the dark side and power of art, truth, and friendship, and it's described as wittily written and nuanced. So lots of fun there. That one is not me.
Next up is The Perfumist of Paris. And it is the third in the series by Alka Joshi. Begins in, the henna artist should actually be first. That's the 1950s. Secret Keeper of Jaipur is the 60s, and this book is going to put us into the 1970s. It takes place in Paris, and our protagonist, Radha, has a budding career as a perfumer. But her career must compete with the demands of her family and some secrets from her past. She loves being a mother, and she's finally found her passion, a treasure trove of scents. Her work is exciting and challenging. She only wishes her husband Pierre could understand her need to work. Her work takes her to India, where she enlists the help of the courtesans of Agra, women who use the power of fragrance to seduce, tease, and entice. She's on the cusp of a breakthrough when she finds out the son she never told her husband about is heading to Paris to find her, upending her carefully managed world and threatening to destroy an already vulnerable marriage. So I grabbed the first two books in the series, and also Celine. I don't know if very many, read. Remind me of Celine because she is also a woman who had to make some hard choices, not only between career and family, but she also has a child born when she was quite young when she gave for adoption. So that plays heavily in Celine's story as well.
Can I have the henna artist?
What's that?
Can I have the henna?
Of course you may. Yeah, I think, I've not read these yet, but after looking into this one, I thought they sounded pretty, like they would be very, very good.
So community board from Tara Conklin. The main character, Darcy Clipper, is devastated when her husband leaves her for another woman, and Darcy retreats to her childhood home, hoping her parents will lovingly embrace her and welcome her in and take care of her and tell her everything's gonna be all right. But she's a little surprised because they've moved to a retirement home in Arizona and just haven't sold the house yet. So she still wallows in her parents' house, and she's eating all the dried goods, you know, the olives and the macaroni and cheeses and things that need to be finished up. And she's really stuck in some self-imposed isolation and really struggling and not doing very well. She starts reading the local online community board to see what's going on in her area. And one day she's gonna encounter a pet that has been reported missing in her yard. And it's just the kickstart she needs to get out of her house and get on with her life. So this book is, promises to be endearing and heartwarming once you get over the wallowing phase of the book. And we all go through this hard times in life, so we can connect to that. I picked The Love Scribe off the new shelf for that uplifting, you know, life goes on, you have to overcome things kind of story. And Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson, because he's known for writing a witty family story, and this should be heartwarming and witty. So check out Community Board if you need something to get you out of your rut. I guess it is that time of year to do that. And the next one is, well, The Golden Spoon. So this is for fans of the Great British Baking Show. I don't know why somebody hasn't thought to do this yet, but it is a cozy murder mystery set on a baking show, reality TV show style. It's actually already in development to be a Hulu series, so there's gotta be some interesting comedy, you know, twisty writing going on here. A killer is on the loose of a hit TV baking competition. Bake Week is all ready to begin and everything seems just fine, just normal, usual shenanigans, oven's not working right, someone put salt where there should have been sugar, the hosts are bickering, but when a body is discovered, everyone becomes a suspect. A delicious, suspenseful thriller. So I picked out some similar read-alikes for not too cozy cozies. Little Bookshop of Murder, and this one looks especially entertaining. Rose and Peg Solve a Murder. If you want, you know, not a devastating dark murder mystery, but something that is well written and enjoyable, check out these read-alikes while you're waiting for The Golden Spoon.
Oh, you're good. Alright. Two Wars and a Wedding by Lauren Wiggum. Her. It's set in the 1890s. It is a dramatic coming-of-age story of sorts, or at least coming into your own type of story. It follows Betsy Hayes at 2 points in her life as she is trying to break into the male-dominated field of archaeology in Greece, but trouble begins to brew while she is there. And then just a few years later, we find her again swept up in another war as she searches for her former friend Ava. It's described as a book with an unforgettable cast of characters that are compelling and heartwarming in their relationships, and that it is using an often overlooked time period to explore the importance of female friendships. So really interestingly set and well-written story overall. The first read-alike I have is Band of Sisters. Not only as an introduction to her voice as an author, but also because of the focus on female friendship and times of war. This is also referred to as a heartwarming story that follows Kate Morgan as she reluctantly answers the plea of her friend to take up relief efforts during World War I. It's described as detailed and engrossing with a trailblazing cast of characters, which I thought was fun. The other read-alike I have is The Book of Goose. It is a gripping and heartbreaking novel about female friendship, art, and the power of memory. Sabine is dead, and her childhood best friend Agnes receives this news in America, far from the French countryside, that she escaped with Sabine's help. And and it's described as a captivating and emotional story. It was also listed as one of the best books of 2022.
Red Queen by Juan Gomez Jurado. Our protagonist is Antonia Scott. She's the daughter of a British diplomat and a Spanish mother, and she has a savant-like ability to reconstruct crime scenes and solve baffling murders. After personal trauma, she is refused to continue her work or even leave her apartment. John Gutierrez is a police officer in Bilbao. Disgraced, suspended, and about to face criminal charges, he is offered a chance to salvage his career by a secretive organization that works in the shadows to direct criminal investigations of a highly sensitive nature. All he has to do is convince recalcitrant Antonia to come out of her self-imposed retirement. The case they must solve is a macabre, ritualistic murder of a teenage boy from a wealthy family whose body was found without a drop of blood left in it. And following that event, a high-ranking executive and daughter of one of the richest men in Spain is kidnapped, and these crimes are tied together. What they know is that behind them both is a hidden mastermind with even more sinister plans. The only person with a chance to see the connections, solve the crimes, and successfully match wits with the killer is Antonia Scott. As Rita likes, I brought along Bloodless by Preston and Child. All these bodies, this is a young adult selection from Blake. This has recurred many times in books I've read, and it's historically, it's been a, I don't know if it's a myth or not, but there are bodies found with all of their blood gone from them, murdered bodies. So, literary trope or real event, I'm not sure. Oops, sorry.
What happened to Ruth Ramirez? So this promises to be equal parts hilarious and haunting. This is the debut author from this, this is the debut novel from this author. We're gonna follow a Puerto Rican family who lives in Staten Island, who's discovered that their long missing sister may still be alive, and they struggle to find her. 13-year-old child Ruthie disappears after track practice. There's no trace, there's no leads, and the family does not recover well. 12 years later, her older sister Jessica spots a woman on a TV show and brings in her younger sister Nina to confirm that the hair color is different, but that's her sister. She's got the same little distinctive birthmark on her face. They recognize her face shape. So they quickly come up with a plot to figure out where the show's going on, how they're gonna get there, and their mother, Dolores, hears their story, and she wants to go with them. So part mystery, part family travel, a lot of interesting components in this, and I can't wait to find out more. I'm a sucker for a funny book too, so I'm hoping it's as heartwarming and funny as it should be. I picked Transistent Kingdom and Neruda on the Park because these also deal with being an immigrant family to the United States and struggling in your settings and overcoming hard times like it sounds like the Ramirez family is going to do. Not quite the mystery component on these two, but wonderful reads nonetheless. Night Flight to Paris is actually a sequel to 3 Hours in Paris.
Oh, that was good.
Good to hear. Well, she's already read it, so somebody else wants it. So we're gonna have the same main character here. It's been 2 years since Kate Reese has left Spycraft. She's taken up a job in the Scottish Highlands as a sharpshooting instructor. Her quiet and peaceful life is disturbed when her former handler convinces her to come back in for one more dangerous 3-part mission in Paris. Each task essential and growing in difficulty. Kate will encounter sheikhs and spies, poets and partisans as she races to keep up with her assignments. Kira Black has crafted another thrill ride with a portrait of Paris at the height of Nazi occupation. So this is the previous in the series. I do believe that she was sent on a spy mission to try and assassinate.
It's all within 3 hours.
Yes, it's very nice, neat timetable. Kate Quinn, The Rose Code, is also about female spies during this same period and promises to have interesting characters and a thrilling pace.
Next up is The Kunsters in Paradise by Catherine Schein. There was a time when this family lived their fairy tale life in the city of Vienna, but they were forced to flee under nightmarish circumstances in 1939. At that time, our protagonist, Mamie, was just 11 years old. The family made their way, stunned and overwhelmed, to sunny, surreal LA, where they joined a colony of distinguished Jewish musicians, writers, and intellectuals also escaping Hitler. Mamie Kunstler is now 93 years old, clever and glamorous as ever, continuing to live her fairy tale life in Venice, California. She's happy in her bungalow with her housekeeper and her gigantic Saint Bernard. Sounds delightful, doesn't it? But her tranquility is upended when her grandson Julian arrives from New York City to seek his fortune in Hollywood. And it's 2020, and there's a global pandemic. And Julian's short visit suddenly has no end in sight. So faced with months of lockdown and a willing listener, Mamie begins to tell Julian the varied stories of her early years in LA. Her escapades with eminent emigres like Arnold Schoenberg, Christopher Isherwood, Thomas Mann, and Greta Garbo. While the pandemic cuts Julian off from the life he knows, Mamie's tales open up a world of lives that came before him and reveal to him just how much the past holds of the future. There are numerous books that I'm sure we could all name, probably 3 or 5 pretty easily, of someone who escaped from Nazi Germany, sharing their story, either with us or with a member of their family. And I also chose, but I didn't bring any of those as a read-alike, but I did choose to bring Isabel Allende's The House of Spirits. That book is, there are three generations, and the story is woven back and forth, but it also brings home how universal our experiences can be. And this is actually her first published book.
So this is Confidence by Raphael Frumkin. It features 2 lifelong friends, conmen, occasional lovers, who find themselves on top of the world after founding a company that promises instant enlightenment. It's in this hilarious, witty story. It features a diverse cast of characters and a sardonic look at the American dream. And I don't want to spoil any more. I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not going to share more, but definitely well worth the checkout. With similar themes of hustlers, we have The Bandit Queen by Trini Shroff. It features a young Indian woman who is falsely rumored to have killed her husband and finds herself in a little bit of a predicament when other village women seek her help in doing the same. It is also described as witty and humorous, but also a poignant social commentary on the roles of women. We also have Counterfeit by Kristen Chen Ava Wong. I'm sorry, I can't read my own notes. By Kristen Chen. It features Ava Wong as our protagonist and her former roommate Winnie, who join forces to create an counterfeit operation to sell luxury handbags. It is described as sharply comedic, can't read anymore. Sharply comedic story of two unforgettably strong women as they challenge social expectations. Sorry about that, folks. My brain just kind of went as we were talking. Fun times.
Pineapple Street by Jenny Jackson. This is her debut. It is a deliciously funny story of a family, love, class. This zeitgeisty novel follows three women in one wealthy Brooklyn clan. Darlie, the eldest daughter in the well-connected old money Stockton family, followed her heart, trading her job and her inheritance for motherhood. Sasha, a middle-class New England girl, has married into the Brooklyn Heights family and finds herself cast as the arrivist outsider. Georgiana, the baby of the family, has fallen in love with someone she can't have and must decide what kind of person she wants to be. Pineapple Street is a smart escapist novel that sparkles with wit. It's about the peculiar unknowability of someone else's family, the miles between the haves and the have-nots, the insanity of first love, and it is fleshed out by recognizable, lovable, if fallible, characters. This reminded me immediately of House of Mirth. Nicole goes to the new shelf. I go way back to something really old. But it is the talk of class, who's in love with who, the decisions we make for our loved ones, whether it be our romantic loved ones or our family members. I think that would have have a lot in common with Pineapple Street. And then I also brought The Price of Inequality. That is a nonfiction selection, but to give some hard numbers and some very specific information about the haves and have-nots and how that impacts our culture.
Next up is the newest from Lisa Scalolini, Loyalty. She usually writes thrillers. This one promises to be more of a historical fiction. It's going to take place with the rise of the mafia in Sicily. An emotional and epic
See, it's contagious, it's my fault, I'm sorry.
Emotional and action-packed epic. Lots of unforgettable characters, worlds colliding at the same time. Franco is a lemon grower who has dreams of owning his own grove, but given the caste system, he's really struggling to make ends meet, and his baron has asked him to kidnap a boy named Dante. Gaetano sets out to find the boy and the kidnapper, and his mission is filled with dark surprises and turns. Alfredo is a goat herder under constant threat of being found out. Twists and turns abound in this monumental showdown with a historic fiction setting. Lots of interesting things going on in here. I picked a similar story, lots of interesting characters taking place at Sicily, early 1900s, the Farinos of Sicily. And Pam Jenoff also writes a historical fiction with lots of twists and turns and interesting characters, I do believe. And The Last Girls of Paris seem to have similar characters and things as well. Dust Child.
Congratulations to me for picking the book with the most difficult author name. This is Dust Child by K. Mae Phan Nguyen. She is a Vietnamese writer who focuses on Amerasians, the children of American GIs and Vietnamese women conceived during the Vietnam War. 40-something Thanh Pham, a half-black, half-Vietnamese child of the enemy, features in the first of two complementary storylines as Pham attempts to immigrate with his family to the United States under the American Homecoming Act of 2016. The second line follows Dan, a war veteran who returns to Vietnam from the United States with his wife, Linda. But Dan carries a secret. During the war, he had an affair with a Vietnamese woman who gave birth to their child. Now Dan wants to track them down in hopes of reconciliation. Nguyen nimbly skips around in time to flesh out both Pham's and Dan's desires, pain, and guilt. The plots converge and resolve in a satisfying, if somewhat predictable, outcome. Despite some bumps, there is much to admire. Just FYI, when I was trying to find other stories about these dust children, biracial kids left in Vietnam, there was very little, but I did find a lot of things about dogs that went to Vietnam and came back with the GIs. Just thought that was interesting. Anyway, The Nature of Small Birds is a story, however, that is that does touch on that topic. This is in the inspirational fiction section, and I think it's Finkbeiner. I transcribed the name wrong. And then this is The Mountains Sing, and Gwen's other novel mentioned. This is a beautifully written, the descriptions of landscape and the natural environment that the family lives in are pretty remarkable. It is a Vietnamese family from their perspective during the war in Vietnam.
Our Best Intentions is a debut novel for Frances Les Ning, and Yes, Ask Again by Mary Beth Keane. They're gonna have similar family explorations, similar emotional storylines. In this one, Bobby is a single father trying to start his own business in New York while taking care of Angie, his introverted teenage daughter. During summer break, Angie is walking home from swimming practice and finds Henry McCary, a classmate from a wealthy family, stabbed and injured, and she tries to help him. The incident doesn't end very well and sends shockwaves through the community and reveals surprising truths.
Yes.
It's an exciting debut focusing on an immigrant family in the middle of a criminal investigation and what lengths parents will go to protect their children. What Have We Done? By Alex Finley. New exciting thriller for fans of Harlan Coben and T.J. Ellison. A stay-at-home mom with a past, a has-been rock star with a habit, and a TV producer with a debt. 3 seemingly separate lives and 1 shared secret. 25 years ago, these 3 characters were close friends growing up in Savior House, which was a group home for parentless teens. Savior House had to close after some of the kids went missing. The 3 friends were split up, everyone in the group home was split up and had to go their separate ways, and they hadn't seen each other since. But now, once again, their lives are in trouble. Someone's trying to kill the kids or disappear the kids from the Savior House. What Have We Done is an edge-of-your-seat thriller and gut-wrenching coming-of-age story.
Before I talk about this, I'm gonna make a confession. I wrote down as a read-alike Thursday Murder Club, and I thought, I brought that to every Books in Focus for the last 4 months. I am not bringing it again. My friends will know that it's a read-alike. Anyway, Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessie Q. Sutanto. In Sutanto's latest, a lonely but resilient tea shop owner tries to solve a murder. Vera Wong's tea shop in San Francisco's Chinatown may have lost most of its customers, and her Gen Z son rarely returns her texts, but she manages to thrive on her own. After finding a dead body in her tea shop and stealing a piece of evidence from the crime scene, Vera uses her detective skills to try to solve the murder. Using tea and home-cooked meals, Vera draws close to her 4 suspects. Each of them has a secret that connects them to the victim and might tear their newfound family apart. The mystery has plenty of twists to keep readers guessing, and Vera's case notes at the end of some of the chapters add much humor to the deductive process. Recommended not only for fans of Sutanto, but also of any character-driven cozy mysteries. And I brought, this was the only one on the shelf. We have a few of hers, but the others were checked out. So I brought 4 aunties and a wedding. There's a series about aunties. So I've not read her yet, but I think it sounds like a lot of fun.
Strangers in the Night by Heather Webb. Webb is the story of a tumultuous romance that scandalized the world between Frank Sinatra and Ava Gardner. And it is the focus of a captivating fictionalized story of their romance that features a star-studded cast. For read-alikes, I have, this is a nonfiction title, Sinatra and Me, by, and I'm gonna try it, Tony Opiciano, O-N-D-Sano. This is the gentleman who actually lived with Frank Sinatra for the last decade of his life and recorded his stories. He was described as Sinatra's closest friend at the end. And then for a little bit of lighter fiction, I chose Daisy Jones and the Six, because of its similar focus on musicians and fame and the gripping nature of the story overall. And because we haven't told you to read that book enough yet.
That's gonna be a movie on Prime, like in a couple of months next year.
Yep, that's what I've heard. And then this one I have a whole bunch. Running out of room. I'm gonna set that one there. Talk about it in a minute. So this is Clytemnestra by Costanza Cassati. It is the reimagining of the Oresteia from Clytemnestra's perspective, and for those of you who are not super familiar with Greek mythology, Clytemnestra is the wife of Agamemnon and the twin sister of Helen, who would become Helen of Troy. This is her story full of vengeance and heartbreaking shenanigans as she is forced to watch the murder of her daughter Iphigenia at the hands of her husband Agamemnon, so he and half of Greece can go to war for Helen. When he returns, it leaves Clytemnestra with a choice between acceptance or vengeance. It's described as beautifully written with a well-crafted plot that gives this ancient story of a fierce and fiery woman new life and the spotlight that she deserves. So I have, as Rita likes, the Oresteia, which I definitely recommend checking out. It's also the Greek mythology that talks about the founding of Athens' legal system, because everyone needs good mythology for the founding of the legal system, apparently. And then I also have the story of the Trojan War, which is the original in the Iliad and the Odyssey. And then the other read-alikes I have are 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes and The Women of Troy by Pat Barker. And both of these read-alikes are perspectives on the Trojan War, written by both the Greek and Trojan women who lived through it. So it takes a different perspective from the menfolk. It should be fun and interesting. This one, The Women of Troy, is also, I think, part of a series, unless my brain has gone very fuzzy, which, as you have seen today, is a distinct possibility. She does.
I just had found some happy topics today.
Well, this one looks like it's in that same vein,
Oh,
my
my
goodness.
goodness. Right, yeah.
Uplifting, feel good.
Yeah, right, yeah. And it's a really likes to go along with it. This is A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. Kingfisher is a Hugo and Nebula Award winner. And this time, the story goes Southern Gothic with Waffle House visits included. In this hilarious, gruesome contemporary horror novel. So I did say all those words in one sentence. Hilarious, gruesome contemporary horror novel. Archaeoentomologist Sam Montgomery is the protagonist, and she is also a charmingly kooky narrator. She's between digs. She decides to drive to her deceased grandmother's house in rural North Carolina to spend some time with her mom. While there, she digs into her family history in hopes of discovering medical information and scientific explanations for the weirdness that takes place at her family home. For instance, when she arrived, there was a vulture on the mailbox, which doesn't seem to her like a good omen. There is a strange absence of insect life. Her mother's behavior is anxious and odd, and she, Sam, has new mysterious bouts of sleep paralysis. She uncovers destructive and deeply buried horrors. Horror fans who like a little whimsy on the way to a chilling climax won't want to miss this. Very strange juxtaposition of adjectives, but sounds pretty intriguing. So read-alikes, I brought, two other happy titles, My Sister the Serial Killer and The Majesties, and they are horror, humor, and magical realism run through those stories as well.
That one book, the cover is just really
This one?
high.
That one?
Yeah.
Looks like Picasso, right?
Sorry, folks. Let them know that we are running over. Some of these are not like, where did they all go? Alrighty. So this is The Last Russian Doll by Kristen Loesch. It is a haunting historical thriller and family saga about betrayal, revenge, and redemption that follows three generations of Russian women from the 1917 revolution to the last days of the USSR. Our protagonist is Rosie, who is on a mission to discover the truth of her family history after her engagement to an Englishman. She has an English name, and seemingly everything is fine, but little bits of Russian keep creeping back in. So she wants to find the truth of these things so that she can move forward with her life. My first read-like is Queenie Malone's Paradise Hotel by Ruth Hogan because of its similar focus on mother and daughter relationships and its theme of finding out family history and family secrets. It's the heartwarming story about Tilda, who is rediscovering her relationship with her mother after she's asked to clean up her mother's earthly possessions. The other read-alike I have is The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd, which also delves into family secrets. Nell Young is the daughter of the distinguished cartographer Dr. Young, and though they have been estranged for the past 7 years, with his unexpected death, Nell's left to pick up the pieces and unravel the secrets of her family.
I read that one.
Yeah, it was
I think it goes into time travel.
a little bit. There is some magical realism in there that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
As far as maps and how they work. And then we have our first set of nonfiction, which is Walt Disney, an American original. This is actually a new edition of see, just really excited, of Walt Disney. It is a biography of him. The original one was published in 1960, so this one has some updated information in it, and it's just in time for the 100th anniversary of Disney shenanigans, of Disney things, Disney things overall. It is described as a thought-provoking and accessibly written book that explores Walt Disney in his life and the times in which he lived, from his early struggles to him changing the face of cinema and defying the odds to create the largest storytelling empire on the planet. And if anyone can think of a bigger one, please let me know, because I was trying real hard and I could not think of anything bigger than Disney. My first read-alike is Disney's Land, Walt Disney and the Invention of the Amusement Park That Changed the World by Richard Snow. It is his story about the development of Disneyland, which was his crowning achievement, but it almost ruined him. He almost went bankrupt and actually had to get loans in order to finish that project. Through his trials and tribulations and all of the things that went into the magical kingdom. The other read-alike I have is actually not focused on Walt himself, but it is The Queens of Animation, The Untold Story of the Women Who Transformed the World of Disney and Made Cinematic History by Natalia Holt. And that title just about sums it up, but just to add a little bit more is that this book explores the women of Disney Studios who helped shape the iconic films that we all know and love to this day.
Evidently have limited pictures of Phyllis Wheatley, I'm sorry. This is a book by David Waldstreicher. He's a professor and he's an excellent researcher. This is described as a magisterial biography of 18th century poet Phyllis Wheatley. She lived from 1753 to 1784. But this book begins in 1761 with Whitley's arrival in Boston. As a young girl, she was enslaved by the Wheatley family until they granted her freedom in 1773, shortly after the publication of her first poetry collection. Walt Stryker follows Wheatley's trajectory from a promising student to a national celebrity. He explores her development as an artist. He excels at teasing out the subtle political messages within Wheatley's poetry, contending, for instance, that on being brought from Africa to America, satirizes the racism critics accuse it of perpetuating. He also candidly addresses gaps in the historical record, such as when he constructs a plausible account of the underdocumented last 6 years of Wheatley's life, when her marriage to a domineering grocer took her out of the limelight. The historical scholarship dazzles, and the incisive analysis of Wheatley's poetry suggests she had a more liberatory political agenda than she's often credited for. The result is an indispensable take on an essential early American poet. This is the other book we have about her in our library. These are her complete writings. So she obviously doesn't have volumes and volumes of work. But what she did was pretty remarkable. Became a poet essentially as a child and earned her freedom through her creativity.
This is The Untold Power, the Fascinating Rise and Complex Legacy of First Lady Edith Wilson by Rebecca Boggs Roberts. This is a well-researched and detailed biography of Edith Wilson, and it sheds new light on her controversial role in running the country as arguably the first female president after her husband's stroke. So it goes into a lot of archival records and things that were not previously available. So it's definitely well worth looking into. And in the meantime, I have Edith and Woodrow, The Wilson White House by Phyllis Lee Levin. It is revealing and meticulously researched, and it's about the relationship between Edith and Woodrow before, during, and after his stroke. And the fun thing is that most people don't realize this, but Edith Wilson was actually Woodrow Wilson's second wife. So it talks about that part of the relationship as well. And then I also grabbed a biography of Woodrow Wilson, just to help you understand him as a person. He's a weird one, but to understand him as a person and how he thought about their relationship as well. And then this is the Dirty Tricks Department by Stanley Lovell. Sorry, for some reason I was gonna say Lovely, and I'm like, that's not right. So it is the story of Stanley, or I'm sorry, not by Stanley Lovell, but of Stanley Lovell, the OSS, and the masterminds of World War II secret warfare. The author is John Lists. We really do need that blooper reel, don't we? While there are several books and movies about the exploits of World War II spies and the OSS, there's comparatively little written about the scientists who helped develop the gear that they needed for that kind of spycraft. This is a meticulously researched book that is the story of Stanley Lovell and other scientists who helped develop the dirty tricks used by the Allies and their spies during World War II. My first read-alike, and there really is very little written about them, which I found surprising. So my first read-alike is Operation Paperclip, and it is about the secret intelligence program that worked to bring Nazi scientists, especially people behind their rocket program, to the United States in the waning days of World War II in an effort to beat out the USSR in fear of a coming conflict with them. The other read-alike I have is Geniuses at War, Bletchley Park, Colossus at the Dawn of the Digital Age. And this one, although it's not focused on America like the other two books, looks at the kinds of machines and technologies that were being developed at that time to help win the war, specifically the Colossus, the computer that was used to defeat the Enigma code.
Guardians of the Valley, John Muir and the Friendship Who Saved Yosemite by Dean King. This is the dramatic and uplifting story of a legendary outdoorsman and conservationist John Muir and his journey to become the man who saved Yosemite. In June of 1889 in San Francisco, John Muir has a meeting with his longtime editor at the Century magazine, Robert Underwood Johnson. They decide to venture to Yosemite Valley, the magnificent site where 20 years earlier, Muir experienced a personal and spiritual awakening that would set the course of the rest of his life. Upon their arrival, they are confronted with a shocking scene as predatory mining, tourism, logging industries have plundered and defaced the grandest of all the special temples of nature. Johnson, a champion of society's most pressing debates via the pages of the nation's most prestigious magazine, decides that he and Muir must fight back. Their pact marks a watershed moment, leading to the creation of Yosemite National Park and launching an environmental battle that captivated the nation and ushered in the beginning of the American environmental movement. Beautifully rendered, deeply researched, and inspiring, Gardens of the Valley is a timely and powerful origin story of the complex environmental challenges that we still face today and that are becoming increasingly urgent. For a read-alike, more of a read-about, another simple little book, The Essential Muir, and you can read about what he was thinking about and how he was feeling when all this was getting started.
Bird Girl. Carol, you're on hold for Bird Girl yet?
Not yet. I've got too many books out right now. It's on my books tomorrow list.
21 is a lucky number, though.
This one certainly looks promising and interesting, especially with great comparisons like H is for Hawk and The Hawk's Way. Some local favorites and rave reviews online. Environmentalist, activist, and birder, Maya Rose Craig has a loving new memoir. She's gonna focus first and foremost on birding, but there's some other big topics covered in this book as well. Our mother's mental illness and also preservation of our planet. Bird Girl follows Maya Rose and her family as they travel the world in search of rare birds and describes many of the encounters they have along the way and the astonishing landscapes. Each bird is gonna bring out different moments of joy and reflection and memories and thoughts. Maya Rose Craig also discusses the environmental issues that she encounters on her travels and her observations and her challenges along the way. She's very young and she's British and Bangladeshi, so to be such a young age and having this experience and getting into birding, she's going to discuss some of the ageism, sexism, and racism she's encountered along the way. But promises to be a fresh take on an old hobby through some fresh eyes. Thanks so much for coming, everyone. Be sure and check out our calendar for all the exciting activities we come and have coming up. And if you haven't gotten your all course selections picked out yet, please stop at the front desk for the all course booklet, because signups are on February 20th. Anything else you want mentioned? Book show and tell, of course, on the 4th Tuesday of the month. 28th.